Hello again, everybody. I'm going to take you home with the ethics in research slide. This is actually the last slide. Mr. Davis didn't quite get to it. It's worth spending some time talking about. We've already looked at the social science research. We've looked at the Stanford Prison Experiment. We've looked at the Milgram research, neither one of which could be done today because colleges are much smarter and much more careful about taking care of the subjects in their research. So partially in response to studies like that, many colleges came up with what's called institutional review boards. And if you want to do research, you have to go before this board and you have to prove all of these things that you're going to do. So what we're going to see on this slide, they would have to say this and more to the institutional research board. We are going to protect these people. This is what we're going to do to make sure that our study is ethical. So one of the first things they're going to do is what's called obtaining informed consent. You have to say, here are the risks that might come up. I mean, whether it's drug research, whether it's any other type of research, we have to say, if you're going to be in a research study at college, you need to know if there's a risk of something happening to you. So we need to protect those people. And the benefits, obviously, but people aren't too concerned about the benefits. They're more concerned about the risks. And it must be voluntary. You can't do research on somebody unless they know they're being studied. So you can't give somebody a drug unless they know they're being studied. Now, you can have some deception. We're going to talk about that. There can be some deception, but it's up to the institutional review board to say, is the value of this deception worth what we're going to get out of this research? So if you're going to deceive somebody, you have to be very, very careful about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And you have to tell the board, this is why I have to deceive them, and this is why it's not going to harm them very much. But we'll talk about that here in a second. We have to protect them from harm and discomfort. If they're going to be uncomfortable, we have to tell them that as part of the outlining the risks. So, eventually what would happen is if all of the psychological researchers weren't following this, nobody would volunteer for their studies because they'd say, you know what, they don't tell me that I'm going to be hurt and I'm harmed and it's uncomfortable. So they have to tell people that they're going to do that. Once they're in a study, once their data is there, they have to be very, very careful about keeping that research, all the data, confidential. So they can't be sharing that out. And in fact, my daughter's doing research for her PhD, and sometimes when they share data, they have to be very, very, very careful about anonymizing that data. So in other words, if you're in a study, they might use your data, but they will make sure that that data can't be pinpointed to you, that you're anonymous. And again, they would tell you that as part of the informed consent. They would say, we are going to share your data with other institutions, but we will ensure that your name is not attached to it and there's no way you could be identified with that. And then debrief afterward, especially if you are going to deceive people. So you have to afterwards say, here's what we did, here's what we found, and if you've already found it, but maybe later they'll say, here are the findings. But like with Milgram, one of the stories that may or may not be true is that one of the people in the Milgram experiment went home and was scouring the obituaries for the next couple of days because he thought he had killed somebody. Now, after the experiment, Milgram should have told this guy, should have said, it was all fake. The person behind the wall was a Confederate. So, that was just really bad design, really from start to finish. So you have to tell people afterwards what happened, especially if you have deceived them, and that is your ethics in research.